Hi everyone. I wanted to continue this tutorial series that I've started on cross-platform development, and what we'll be doing today is we'll actually get Cloud Firestore, so a real-time database, the new newish Google flagship product. We'll actually get that database running with Ionic 5, and we'll use Capacitor so we can do cross-platform development. And finally, we'll use some plugins with Capacitor so we can do things like access the camera. And what I want to go through today is so in the first video that I have, and please check it out if you haven't, I go over all these resources you can have to learn about the background of what's going on. In this video, I'm going to focus, I'm actually just going to start a new project and explain less as I go for the setup, and just assume that if you're interested, you'll catch the first video. But in this one, we're gonna set up a single page UI. That UI is going to be able to, you can take a look at it, is going to be able to log pictures, to be able to edit those pictures. Can't really see the edit buttons, but or delete those pictures, and I have to work on that. This app's also going to have to be able to add your current location. So this is what we're aiming for. I was just proving to myself that it actually works. It's a pretty simple application. You just add like a title, some thoughts. You can add your location and add a picture, and then it logs to Firebase and picks up everything that is already in Firebase and displays it. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for. Let's get started. All right, so once again, please do check out the first video if any of this goes too fast, especially at the beginning. So I have node.js installed. So actually, instead of doing it that way, why don't I just let's open a node.js command prompt, and here it is. I'm going to cd to a certain location where this project exists under, it doesn't exist yet. I'm going to make a new one, but I'm going to put it in Ionic 5 React app. Just make sure this is the right location. Yeah, it is. All right. So in order to start a project, we want to do Ionic start, and just to we don't actually need tabs for this one, so we're just going to do blank. That just means we want a blank template, -- type equals react -- capacitor, because we are going to be using capacitor. So that, once again, that was Ionic start blank. Oh, it's asking me if I want a blank starter project, and I do. So I guess I could have bypassed that with just Ionic start template blank. That's fine. And as usual, when this kind of thing's happening and it's just spinning up a project, I will pause the video so you don't have to sit with me bored. Okay, so now we have an app. If I hit ls, if I hit ls here, we can see, oh, I accidentally called this app blank. I did not mean to do that. Let's go ahead and rename that. So I'm going to move blank, mv blank to, what should we call this? Realtime. Camera geo app. Alright, so renamed that, and I'm going to cd to that template that I just made. And alright, so here's what we've got inside it. Let's just go ahead and open that up with Visual Code at this point. So we are in React. React app. This is what we called it. Alright, so I'm going to right click, open with code. I prefer Visual Code for this kind of project. It's just an IDE, it doesn't matter if you're more comfortable with Sublime or Atom or whatever, Dreamweaver or something. Go ahead and use that. Alright, so here is our single page, home.tsx, and in app.tsx you can see we're importing that, and then we are routing to it, right? So we're setting our redirect to home and our route path to home. Alright. So that's all good. Let's go ahead and set up this project for Firebase. Yeah, so I'm going to skip over to here, and let's do that. So here's my Firebase console. I'm going to add a project. I'm going to call this project add Firebase to one of your existing. I might be at my project limit. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Let's enter the project name. So Realtime Ionic 5 and continue. It's my default account. Let me pause the video while that's getting set up. Alright, let's continue. Here's my project. We're going to have to set up the databases real quick. So let's create a Cloud Firestore database. We're going to start in test mode. I'm not going to go over authentication or creating specific users in this tutorial. My aim is just to get a functional database and get image data and location data moving in and out of that database to a phone, tablet, or website or desktop. And I think that's probably enough for a single tutorial, so that's what we're going to do. Because of that, we're just going to start in test mode. That means we're going to allow read and write access for a month, and we can always reset this if we want. Alright. I use the default location right there. I just clicked through that really fast, but you can set your database location. And I'll pause the video while it's provisioning. Okay, so we have a blank database now. If we click over in rules, we can see that we have this allow read write and the timestamp for when we want that to end. And as it says, it's a good idea to configure this for having authentication. If you want to do that, you need to authorize a sign-in method. I usually use email password, and then handle that on your app. So there's a way to sign in. Okay, but this is all fine for now. So nothing in the collection, that's the way we want it. what we want to do now is, if we go to project settings, and we can go to no apps in our project. If we click over here in the web, we can register this app as Realtime Geocam or something. We don't need, well, let's go ahead and set up Firebase hosting, why not? Alright, and this is not something we need yet. Let's go to next. We're not actually going to get the Firebase command line tools, but they're interesting for keeping your API key secure. However, that's all fine for now. What we really want at this point is just our API key. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to CDN, and this chunk of code right here in script is what we are interested in. So I'm going to copy that and then switch over to our app. Whoops. Where is our app? There we go. Okay. So here's our app. Let's store our key in a way that it doesn't check into Git. So in miscellaneous, we can have a file in Git that is not going to be checked in, but we can still access. So let's call this file React app environment. Oh, we have a file right here, d.ts. You can see that right here, right? So they've already provided us with a file for environment variables. Over in this file, I'm going to paste in all this stuff that we got. And instead of having this as a variable, because we're using React, let's export a function. And we can call this function get process environment, something like that. And then in that function, we can have a variable called Firebase config. And what we'll do is we'll just return Firebase config, like so. All right, so now let's grab this stuff and let's save this, make sure everything's fine. Looks like we need one more bracket here, and that is good. Okay, so I'm going to open a terminal now. It's important to know that this terminal is just like the node.js terminal I was using, and so it's just a terminal in the same location. This happens to be a git command shell. You can configure what type of terminal by selecting default shell, and as you can see, I'm using git bash. That allows me to type some commands that otherwise might not be accessible from just the normal Windows command prompt. Alright, we need to get some dependencies, some packages, which are going to appear in node modules. We're going to go download these packages for interacting with Firebase. So npm install Firebase -- save. And do I actually have this running anymore? No, I don't. Okay, good. It's gonna take a second. I'll be right back. Okay. So now we have Firebase. The other thing we're going to need, just because of the way that we're coding, it's a React app, is React hooks. So npm install, and I believe the let me just check. So what I'm looking at right here is the bring it down. Is the npm.js.com package React hooks. That'll give you some information about how we're using that. And I will link to all the resources I'm using and more in the description of the video. So this is what we're going to do. npm. I'll just grab it. Okay. So let's run that. It's going to take a second as well. All right, and that's all good. So at this point, we can actually import Firebase. So I'm going to click over to app.tsx. And this is where we'll actually import Firebase. So to do that, let's just import Firebase from Firebase/app. And we also need our function that we exported, get process environment, from react app.env.d. And then after we do that, we can simply call firebase.initialize app and feed in the function get process, and that's basically going to access this file and this variable, the config variable. So that'll take care of registering our app with Firebase. Okay. So let's go ahead and run it at this point, just to for sanity's sake. So ionic serve. Let's make sure everything is okay. I pull this over a bit. The first time you run it, it does take a little while. All right, great. If I hit Control-Shift-I here, that JSON error I'm not actually worried about. But we have this blank app. So you can see that there's a UI components kind of hanging out in there. I'm not sure I like that, so let's see if we can remove that or modify it. All right, so if we click over on index, nothing's happening in there. Home.tsx, you'll see it's given us some components here. Home.tsx has a title, so let's call this ionic-react Firebase. There's our title appearing up here. I'm gonna remove my console. Then you'll see what we have is a ion toolbar, an ion title, where the title is blank, and here's the explore container. So let's go ahead and delete that. That's this part right in here. Oh, that's gone. Good. I don't think we need an ion toolbar either, so I'm going to delete that too. So most of yeah, let's delete that as well. Most of our content's going to happen, all of our content's going to happen right in here in the ion content. Because I'm not using these components, I'm just going to delete the components folder. Actually, let's leave it and let's delete the files, because we may actually, we will want something from there, and we're going to remove this import. I'm going to use the components folder to make data props. So the thing that we'll be passing to Firebase is going to be, it's going to hold an image as a string, and it's going to hold as a base 64 encoded string. It's going to hold a string that has our location and then 2 strings for text. And what I want to do is actually model that so that I have one JavaScript object to deal with, coming back and forth in and out of JSON format where it gets stored on Firebase. Okay, so I am going to keep the components folder, but I've blasted everything in there, and just want to make sure there's no errors. All right, so let's see where we're at here. All right, we've set up Firebase. Have not added the hooks yet. Let's start setting up the app UI for a single page database. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to click over in home.t. Oh, I'm already there. I'm in home.tsx. You can see we have a return statement here. And for us, we're going to, let's see, we're going to have a constant, we're going to use a state. So current, set current equals use state null. And that's just so we can pass data down to some further components that we're going to build in here. I want also a constant function which we can call getEmpty, and what that's going to do is just return a empty it's just return an empty data structure, which will have all the things that we are going to pass to the database, and this is just going to help me to keep track of the type of data that I want. So I want a title and a content. Let's have a date. My goodness, stop auto-completing. Let's have a location. These are just all strings, right? I swear if that happens one more time. A picture. A function, which we can just set to an empty string, and a initial value, which again can be an empty string. And that's the basic format of our data structure. This is all going to be returned. So we're just returning a big chunk of a big JavaScript object, basically. All right, in the Ion page, let's see, we have our Ion header, which has a content, title, and then below Ion header, let's just put that some brackets in case we want some variables we want to call. Inside of Ion content, let's have an ion card header. It's going to get mad at me for that. That's okay. So what it's going to ask me to do is import this. So you see up here we have ion header, ion page. We'll just import ion card header here. We also are going to be using obviously an ion card, a ion card content. So these are just chunks of HTML and CSS that allow us to do things with ions, HTML tags that just make it easier for cross-platform development and formatting. So, all right, ion card header needs to be in an ion card. So I'm just building up the UI here. And inside of the ion card header, we can have probably like an H3. And we can call this new entry. Then below that, let's have ion card content. And this can have another H3. Oops. Another H3. And for this, we'll have a title. And then ion card content is fine. Let's take a look. So we have new entry and title. Yeah. Okay. And notice you can't type anything in yet. That's fine. Below that, so those are our H3. In between title and content here, I'm going to put a to-do. We need to write a add item.tsx file to hold entry. Forgot this is HTML kind of commenting. Okay. So, right, we need to add that in right there. Below the ion card, let's see. Do we want this below? I'm not sure if I want this below the ion card or in the ion card. Let's put it below for now and just keep in mind we might have to move it. But here we're going to do add a list of items added to database to display. So that's going to go there. And that's it. So let's save that. We have a new entry and title so far. We're going to add all the buttons and camera functionality in this add item class. All right, in order to do that, I'm actually going to have to import a few things. So I'm going to hit Control-C down here in my terminal to get out. And then let's see, we need to import a few more things with npm. So what we're going to need is npm install, and let's put this in Ionic. So React hooks and at ionic/pwa elements. These dependencies are going to allow us to use Capacitor plugins like the camera. And it's a two-part deal. You have to install them, and then you have to modify your index.tsx file here. So I'll wait for those to install. And let me close some of these that are driving me nuts. So in index.tsx now we want to import, and this is going to be called define custom elements from ionic/pwa elements/loader. Again, this is so we can use things like the camera. And then right above this React DOM.render, where we render our root, we can define define custom elements, pass in window. Like that. Okay, so now I can use the camera. Okay, so let's start modeling our data next. So in components, I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call this data props. This is going to be a .ts file. And what I'll do is just export default interface data props. So I'm exporting an interface, which is going to require optional parameters. It's just you can think of it as just an object with optional, so there may or may not be a title, so I do $:: there may or may not be content. This is because I want to allow the user to log things in the database even if they're missing things like they didn't put a title, right? Or they didn't want their location revealed. Plausible user story. There's going to be a picture, maybe they do or do. And then we'll have an initial value, just the first thing that the user inputs, and a clear, an initial value and clear actually want to be of type any. Clear is going to wind up being a function. And initial value needs to be any as well. So we have string, any. Good. Okay, I can save that. That is our data prop. Cool. So now let's make a new file, and let's just put this at the top level. I'm going to call this add item.tsx file. And now we're going to start really using React. So we're going to import React. We want useState, and we want useEffect. So these are React hooks, right? We're basically going to write some custom hooks. And we're going to do so. Custom hooks just means we're leaning on React's default hooks, useState and useEffect, and a few other things. And just keep in mind, hooks are like basically functions that we can call in different places in the app. And those functions they're hooks so they can actually hold their own state and detect and interact with user effects. So import Firebase from Firebase. Let's import use document. This one merits some explanation. That's going to be from React Firebase hooks / Firestore. So you can actually check this out in node modules if you want. Just scroll down to where you see React Firebase hooks, and there's some documentation there about Firestore. So if you look at the README here, there's a lot of documentation about how to use that. That's just going to allow us to interact with Firebase through the use document hook. So we're going to keep everything in the React hooks way of coding. We're going to need some things from Ion. So we'll use an Ion item, an Ion button, and an Ion input, because we need the user needs to be able to type things in and then hit buttons to take pictures and get their location and whatnot. That's all going to be from ionic-react. We need to import that file we just wrote, that interface we just wrote, data props, from components / data props. We need, actually we need some more things. We're going to make all this data appear as a card. So let's go ahead and get ion card header, ion card content. Actually, I don't think we need header. Okay. We're also going to need to import plugins, and this is Capacitor's way of using native cameras and geolocation and stuff like that. And that's all at Capacitor core. We're going to import a particular plugin, use camera, from that is at ionic react hooks / camera. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. We need to import as well camera results type, because we need to specify that, and camera source from at Capacitor core, I believe. Right? Yeah. All right. Let's save that. We're also going to need a file. I'm just going to make a new one called item.tsx. So when we add something, the thing that we're adding is going to be an item. So our item is going to be a kind of a simpler file, so it'll be less imports. We still need React from React, of course. We need a few things: Ion item, Ion label, a few things from Ion text, and this is going to be a sliding item, so we can modify the item, delete it, edit it. Ion item option, Ion item options, Ion icon, Ion image. And that's it. That's all going to be from at ionic-react. Finally, we'll import some icons. So the document icon, this is just for visual appeal, and the trash icon from new for a second, icons / icons. This is going to have an interface as well. It's a smaller interface and less important in the sense that we won't be passing it like to and from a database. But this is just so we can do things like edit. And I'm making these all of type any so that we can use functions here. The doc is actually important. This doc is how we're going to grab information from Firebase. So that is quite an important one. All right, so let's go ahead and write item before we write add item. Just kind of makes more sense to me to do it that way. So constant item is going to be React FC. It's going to have some props. That's its own interface, right? We're going to set it to, here's our function call, do edit, do delete, doc, and then let's open up. Inside here, let's let data equal doc.data, so the data that we get from the database, and then we can write our return function. So remember, in React, everything gets, things like item are going to appear like HTML, but really what we're doing is we're calling a function that returns HTML code, sometimes containing JavaScript. So here's our HTML code. Ion item sliding. Ion item. Ion label. Ion text. Whoops. Okay. In the ion label, we can, if we want it to be pretty, we could set it to class ion text wrap, so we don't have text hanging out in unpleasant ways. We can set the class name here to item title, just so that that text appears as a class. And then let's just have a div in here, and inside that div we can put our data.title like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to grab that whole chunk of code right here and paste. So data is actually going to be like the data props element. It will be the data props element. So we'll have a title, a content, a date, a location. All right, and then, and we can actually, so this isn't a title anymore. This is a subtitle. Notice that class name, because we're in ionic-react, appears like that. All right. So subtitle. This can be an item subtitle as well. Probably. This needs to be a subtitle. And then we need subtitle. Finally, our image, right? So where our picture is going to appear right here. So ion image. We need a source variable, and that's going to be set to data.picture. And then we close the ion image. Ion label closes. All right. and then ion item closes. Before we close ion item sliding, we can do an ion item options here, and have an on click, which really means on slide with your finger, right? Equals, and then we put in the function we want to run when the user slides or drags the item over. And so the function we want to run is going to be do edit, and we'll pass in the ID of the document element, and that's it for that. Now below this, so we'll, before we close ion item options, let's have an ion icon, and the slot equals icon only, and the icon is going to be equals document. Like so. Okay. We can leave that there. And sorry, this should all be inside of a ion item options. So what I'm going to do here is make this ion item option singular. Ion item, let's duplicate this real quick. And then this is going to be option. Just to make it a little more clear what I'm doing, let me move this stuff over. So there is our first option, right? Now we need a second one, ion item option for delete. Click equals, open up our brackets to let the renderer know that we are going to be executing some code, some JavaScript code, and this is going to be do delete doc.id, like so. Close that. That's now before we close our option, just so we let the user know. So we let the user know here. We can have another ion icon, and once again, skip slot equals icon only. This time our icon is going to be, you guessed it, the trash. All right. So that is the item. And we're going to export default item at the bottom, so that we, here's our constant item, and then export default just means when we call this, when we type in HTML looking code in our add item and our display item, this whole thing gets exported, this whole item return statement. All right, so back to add item. Now that item is done. For add item, we need to export. Let's make a debug function. So this is just a function where when we pass in info of type data props, we can console.log our info.title, log info.content, log info dot, what else do we have? Date, log info dot location, log info dot picture. It won't be very informative to see the string of the picture as in string format, but it is helpful to know that it's there and to see what kind of format we're saving the picture in. All right, we also need a function that clears all our information of type data props, and all that's going to do is, so remember over in home, we have this title, we're resetting everything. That's basically what we're going to do here. We're going to paste that in, and instead of returning a big object, what we'll do is we'll set info.title equal to that. And we'll set, ooh, that's interesting. That needs to be content. Let's change that over in home as well. And we're going to set that equal to that. Info.date is going to be equal to this. Info.location. We'll reset the picture as well. And we can set clear to the empty string, no harm in doing that, and initial value back to the empty string as well. All right, this is just so the user can clear out their data if they want to. And these need to have semicolons because they're functions. If they want to reset their data before they log it into a database. All right, so just as we did before in item, we're going to have a constant with the same name as the file, add item, and we're going to call the React DOM, and we're actually going to pass in data props here. So we're going to let it know we want a type of data props inside of this return to work with. All right, so first thing, we need a constant, and this is going to be item set item, and that is going to equal use state. And we need to specify the type of thing that we're setting here. So this is our hook item. We're telling it we're going to use the state of this greater hook that we're writing, and in that state we're going to have a type of data prop that we're going to set. Now here's what that data prop looks like. It'll have a title, it'll have a content, oh man, not again. It'll have a content, it'll have a date, a location, and finally a picture. We don't actually care about the two functions here, but that is our call to use state. All right. Below that, let's have a constant which is going to be get photo, and that is going to be use camera. which we can call because of this use camera we're importing up here. Next, we need to actually access Firebase. So we'll have a constant with value, loading, and error. So that is going to be use document. And this is our call to Firebase. So inside of use document, we want to call firebase.firestore.doc. And let's make a place in our database called data. And what we'll do is we'll just add whatever we pass in from the home.tsx, whatever the user passes in as the initial value, is what we'll call the entry. So that'll be the title. And we need to have snapshot listen options. And we need to include our metadata changes. Okay. And that is it for the declaration of that hook. Finally, we need some use effects here. So use effect, first one we'll do is going to be we'll ask if we're loading here from Firebase. So if we're not loading, and we're talking to the hook basically here in use document, and our props has an initial value, so that we have something to add to the database or look for in the database, and our value exists. I want to check that. Finally, we'll do a one last and we'll set item. And the item we're going to set, so now we're talking to this hook up here, is going to be value dot data dot name. Okay, and it doesn't know what value is yet. That's okay. We're going to put a comma here, and now we're going to let it know that we will have a loading props dot initial value and value. Okay. And still not happy with that. Trees. That is because set item value dot data. Oh, object is possibly undefined. Let's see. So what we can do is, if we take a look, this may actually be something we need to, if we go to ts config down here, we have some settings that we probably should change. So JSX-React is fine. True, node. Yes, true. Okay, use strict. We can set to false here. See if that fixes it. No, okay. Interesting. I'm not really sure why that was red, but it has now gone away. I think it might have been that use strict, so I'm not too concerned about the potentially undefined data right there. Moving on. Alright, so that's our our database hook. Let's have one constant now, which is going to be add location. This is going to be async, and what it's going to do is first it's going to call our plugins. So we're going to just set geolocation equal to the plugins that we imported above. And then we're going to have a constant position, which will await geolocation dot get current position to return the current position. That's going to come back as a position variable. We need to drill down into that to get a string that's more interesting to us. So let's have a constant new position equals latitude plus, and we'll just build our string out of the position dot towards dot latitude plus space longitude plus, you guessed it, position dot chords dot longitude. And what we'll return here is we'll return set item. So whenever we get something like the picture or the geolocation or the user enters some information, we're always going to call set item and pass in some data. So in this case, we're passing in a string, so set item, and what we'll do is we want to add to the current item, and what we'll do is we'll add only the field position will update with that new position. So we won't touch the title, the content, any of that. Instead, we'll update the new position. All right, you ready for the camera? So now let's have a constant take photo. That's going to be another async. Function, asynchronous function. We'll have a constant camera photo, and we will await, which we can do because we're in async, a get photo call. And what that's going to do is specify the result type to be, this is what we want is actually base 64. So that is an encoding, kind of a safer encoding for images that will allow us to push that image to the database and pull it from the database. I'm not going to do anything fancy like blob it, you know. So camera source dot camera, I'm just going to pass that string representation back and forth, and let's set the quality to 100. Alright, that's our camera photo, and our call to get photo. It's really that easy. So now what we actually pass to the database is going to be a little bit bizarre. So we need to, because of the way that the view renders, I'm using backticks here. This is going to be a string literal. So this is going to be data.image. String literals are just strings that allow me to pass in code and variables. So here's the string, base 64, comma, and this is all information that a ion image tag, when you pass in photo as a source, will understand as, okay, I have an image that's in JPEG base 64, I know how to render that. Understand. Okay, so in order, all right, there's our comma. Now before we end this string literal, we need a $sign to indicate that we are about to add variables, camera photo dot base 64 string, and data image JPEG base 60. You have to get this right or it won't actually show up as an image. All right. So what we're doing is we're taking a photo, we're passing in that base 64 representation of the photo into this string literal. So we're assembling a string that over here in our item.tsx, when we actually display the data.picture, the ion image source understands as, oh, this is an image. I know how to display this. All right, once again, we need to return, and we're going to set part of set item. We're going to set part of our state here. So once again, we do dot 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 item to indicate that we're just modifying part of the item, and picture dot photo is the part that we're interested in. We're setting picture equal to this constant photo, like that. All right. So now let's have a constant which is on save. So this is actually going to be the asynchronous async call to the database itself. What we'll do is we'll have a variable which we'll call collections reference. Collections ref equals Firebase dot Firestore dot collection collection, and we're looking for the data collection. Didn't like that. Oh, Firestore is a variable here. Okay. Now if we have a title, so if the users pass through a title, we will allow them to, we'll minimally require that, and then we'll allow them to log that to the database. Here is the return of our asynchronous promise. We'll await collection ref. Doc with props title dot set, and here is the actual collections. Let's call it collection ref. That makes more sense to me actually. Collection ref. All right, and here is the actual setting. So what we'll do is we've got this. We'll make title be item dot title. We're specifying the JSON now that'll appear in our database. Content will be item.content. We're specifying our database JSON, so it'll have a title field, a content field. We're specifying it with our state, right? That our use state variable that we're setting throughout when we take a photo and when we update text. Okay. And this is real slick. We can actually do a created on entry, and this will be actually, let's not call it created. Date, keep consistent here. We'll actually just get the date right here as we set it. So new date dot get time, right? Location is already stored. Hopefully if they added their location, so that'll be item.location. They might not have added a location though, so we'll say, did they add a location? Item.location. Did they add it? Ternary operator here. If they did, then item.location. Otherwise, empty string. And then let's do the same thing with picture, because they might not take a picture. So picture, item.picture. Oh. Is there a value for that? If so, we'll set it to item.picture. If not, empty string. And then that is the end of the set, but we need to also let the metadata know that we want to merge this with previous data, not just keep overwriting. Okay, merge is true, and then we can drop that and add that there. So pass in two values basically into set. The first is this one, the second is merge true. All right, once we do that, anytime we save, we want to clear the info. We'll call clear info on item, and then we'll set item back to item. So we'll clear out the data and allow the user to set and clear out the props that we passed in, and allow the user to set new data. Else. So if we have this entry, this is our edit function, otherwise, and it's going to be exactly the same, except for we'll leave out the merge is true. So when we have a new entry, we just want to add it as a new entry. Okay. Either way, that's the end of on save, so semicolon. All right. Now, when a user types in some text entry, we're going to have to update one of our fields with the event that they're typing. Okay, so what we'll do here, just so you can see it, is we'll do an e.prevent default, and you won't actually be able to see this until we start testing, but console.log, and we could just look at the title, for instance. Oh, you know what? We have a function here. We can just call our debug info function and pass in item, and it'll actually show us everything. Okay. We want to set item, and here's the actual magic. ... item, and here e.target.name with e.target.value is going to, this is really slick, allow us to when a user starts typing in the title, in the new entry title or content, when they start doing that, we can actually go into our item that we're about to put into the database, and say they're typing in content. We can pass in, hey, we need to modify the content of item with whatever they're typing. Or if they're typing in the title, we say, hey, we need to modify the title of item and pass in the value. So it's a very cool function that allows us to dynamically modify a complex JavaScript object according to what the user types. Or does, right? It doesn't have to be typed. All right, it's time to write our return statement. Return. So we're going to have an ion card, an ion card content, an ion item, and an ion input. the ion input, and so here's where that update field trick comes in handy. We're going to set the value equal to item.title. Let's have a placeholder called title, capital T maybe. Let's have a name called title. So look, e.target.name, this is how we're actually setting the item. That is important. And then we can have an on-ion change. And that is going to actually call our update field function. So equals update field. That's it. That's actually just going to call update field, and from there we can access the event, the things that the user is typing, and use it to update the state. Okay. I'm just gonna, let's see, I think, yeah, we can just copy and paste this whole item below. This one's going to be item.content, placeholder, going to be content, the name is going to be content. We'll call the same function to update the field. Okay. All right. Now we need some buttons. So let's have an ion button. And for the on click here, first button we can be our on save button. Whoops, on click equals in brackets on save. This is add entry. Maybe just add. Or you know what? Let's call this upload because that's literally what we're doing. Let's have another ion button. And this one is going to be add location. And our on click here is going to call geoposition, right? So just add location was the name of the method there. And then finally, let's add one more ion button. And this is going to have a on click equals take photo. And that's going to be why don't we just call this add photo to keep it consistent. And then after that, we close the content. We close the card. There is our end of our return statement. And then very below, at the very bottom, we export default, add item, and save. All right, now in home.tsx, we've now done this to-do list, so we can pass in an add item. And of course it takes some props. So add item needs an initial value. And we'll set that to current, because remember we're keeping track of state at this level too. And it needs a clear function. And we're going to set that equal to enter some JavaScript. Clear equals, here's our function, set current, get empty. Remember, get empty just returns a big empty, this, right? All right, and of course we need to import add item, right? From this is located up a level, and it's just called add item. Like that. All right, you ready for this to start changing? So let's try ionic serve. May not work. I'm not quite done. We need a at least one more file, but we may actually see some visual changes at this point. All right, here we go. And let's see. I'm not quite, well, let's test this out with our database now. So we should be able to upload everything to our database. So let me hit Control-Shift-I, and as I type things in here, you can see that this is our title content. This is in our debug, right? And so that is just letting me know that our update field in add item here is working, right? That's where that's coming from. All right, so let's do test. First entry, and let's add a location. Let's add a photo. So this is my secondary camera on my laptop. It's a blank photo, but if you're I can't actually switch to my webcam that I'm recording from because I have this camera at the bottom of the screen. Anyway, so the photo, in other words, is the inside of my laptop when it's closed, but that's fine. Let's go ahead and upload that. All right. First argument to be of type non-empty string, but it was undefined. Interesting. So let's see. It was in our await here. Props.title.set. So let's change props.title to let's see. So let's I don't really think we need this initial value. I'm cognizant of what's going on, so I'm going to get rid of that. And over here in home.tsx, let's set title to current. And then we can access that. So let's try this again. Test, add a location, add photo, upload. It was null. Why would that be null? Okay, data props. Let's get rid of initial value. Add item. Let's try that. And then title. Okay. I'll pause the video real quick while I figure this out. Okay, so here is what's going on. There's a bit of a difference between so I'm trying to set the database with an empty string currently. We need to change that. So when we save, this one waits for if the item already exists. This one we're gonna await, and we're not gonna merge. So collection ref, we don't actually need those parentheses. Instead of .doc, we want to add, right? So in case it doesn't exist, we're gonna add, and we're not gonna check props.title. So we're not gonna set, we're gonna add. And we're gonna add the same stuff, right? And clear the same way. Okay. So let's test that out. That was the only change that needed to be made. Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's add a photo of the inside of my laptop. Let's add a location and let's upload. All right, that's good news. Remember, we're not displaying anything yet. So now if we switch over to Firebase, and we go to our, what did I call this? Let me go back. This is the one. All right, so if we go to our database, you can see we have data. We have testing 1, 2, 3. The title is testing, and we have the picture in the right format on our database and my current location according to my browser. Please don't track me down. Okay, so there you go. So now we have data in the database. We need to be able to get it out dynamically every time there's a save into that database and display it. So that is our next task. And we already have a way of displaying it, a way of showing it. We're going to need one more file, and that is going to be our item list.ts. Okay, Okay, so final file. For item list, we're going to import React again from React. We're going to import item from item. We're going to import Firebase from Firebase. We're going to import use collection instead of use document from React Firebase hooks / Firestore. God, I need a new chair. This must drive people crazy, this creaking in my videos. I'm sorry. One day, I will make money from videos instead of giving them away for free, and I will be able to afford a nice chair. Alright, and let's import ion list from ionic-react. We'll have an interface here, just a local interface for our props, and that's just going to have a do-edit function. I don't know if in this video I'll have time to fully integrate the editing function, but let's just start displaying things. So here's what our item list looks like. It's going to take React FC, and we're going to pass in our props, and we're going to specify that we want to do edit, and then begin our function. Alright, so we need to have our value loading error because we're using Firebase hooks, and that needs to be use collection. Let's open that up. And we'll call Firebase Firestore dot collection, and we'll look for that data location that we made, and we can actually do an order by here. So we can order by date, and we can put in a few fields. Let's put a description next, and we'll have snapshot lists and options. We'll include metadata changes. Whoa. True. Let's have a constant, which is our close sliding items equals, and this is for editing, which I'm not sure we'll have time to completely implement. What I really just want is Firebase, so let's let list equals document dot get element by ID. Pass in list, pass any. Constant do delete equals ID, and this one's kind of important. We want to be able to delete things, so firebase.firestore.collection data .doc. We'll pass in the ID, and then we'll ask it to delete. Here's our return function. So this is going to be the ion list. We need to access that list above, so ID equals list, right? Because we're talking to it up here. D equals list value and value.docs.map. All right, here's where the magic happens. So we're actually just going to map everything in our document to the following sub-return. So we'll return, are you loading? If you're not, then go ahead and we'll have an item, which we defined. So the item has the images and the title and the content and the date and the location. And remember, that's just this file right here. So we're now referring to that function with some HTML-ish React. Doc equals doc. We need a do edit equals. So if we want to edit, we will. Here's our iterator. We will have a close sliding items, and we'll have a do edit on that particular element. Passing in. Alright, and then we need a key, and we'll just make that our doc.id, and that is the end of the item. That. Okay. We can close that subreturn there, and then ion list gets closed there, and here's the close of our full return. And then the only thing that's left is to export this. Okay. Now item list, oh. Right, okay. So we need to also add, right below this, do delete. The beauty of using interfaces is it reminds you before you mess up, right? So do delete's the other function we need to pass into item. And that's gonna equal, again, we'll use I as an iterator through these various things. Close sliding items and do delete on I. Let's make this a little bit neater here. Alright, do delete equals that, key equals that, doc.id, close this, now let's add that. Do delete is not missing, I just wrote it. Huh. Do edit, close it. Close the bracket. Oh, we need one more bracket here. There we go. Cool. All right. So bracket to open the code, second bracket to deal with the function. Okay. Now if we go back to home.tsx, we've made our second to do. So inside of here, we can do, oops. And remember, I wasn't sure whether I wanted this inside or outside of the card, so now is the moment of truth for that. But we can put a item list here. And it is going to let me know that My item list needs a do edit. So all we're going to do for that is set current. Whoops. And that needs to be in brackets, right? Set current. And that needs to be set equal to set current. Like that. Alright. You ready for this? Hey! Excellent. Okay, so we now have our first image appearing. Here is a thought. Random reflection. Let's add location. Let's add another photo. Just to be sure that we can deal with multiple photos. Let's upload. And there we go. So that is already running long. I like these tutorials to be generally under an hour, and I'm almost at 2 hours. So I'm gonna stop here. But I think this is a great start for a lot of apps, right? From here, because you can log into a database and upload things like images, download things like images, and you can do it where multiple apps get updated at once. A lot of apps need this functionality. They need to be able to connect lots of different people on different kinds of devices to the same database, the same pool of data, and you can see how to, if you wanted, you could set different locations in, when you set the location to collections.data, you can set this to like a username, right? And so you can keep, or a group, and so keep data specific to users or groups, or you could just have data that everyone accesses and handle it on the app side. But in any case, so let's see, we did all of this. We have not tested the app on multiple platforms, but I'm going to actually leave that for another tutorial. We set up Git so that we can have our config stored. We set up a logging hook for debugging. That's always going to come in handy with these apps. And we didn't set up any internal memory. I don't think we actually need it because we're just logging straight to and from the database. We got the object into the database. We retrieved the object and displayed. All right. So on the next tutorial, we can do these things. Actually, 18 covers that. 18, 17, and 18. Oh man, that's gonna drive me crazy. Go red. Okay. So that's a lot in these two tutorials. One thing I'll do as well is just to give credit where credit is due. There is a repo by oh man, what's his name? Aaron K. Sanders, which I'm gonna put in here. He's done some great stuff with Ionic 4 and Ionic 5, and he writes articles on this stuff. So I'll just put his GitHub profile in here. He's an excellent resource, and a lot of what I did I wouldn't have been able to do without a start on it from his stuff. So big shout out to you, Aaron. And the other thing is I want to include a brief little tutorial. Let's see, where did I put that? It was Ionic hooks. There we go. Okay. second. I'm going to pause while I find this link. Okay, so lastly, we have this this link right here. So the slick trick that I did with update field, I learned about from this example. So it's actually, it's a little bit, I think it's really cool that you can update a complex object dynamically with a function call from on value change, on ion change. So I modified a lot of stuff with that for this tutorial. I always like to add on top of what people already have out there, just give back to the community of developers. And in any case, this is these links are where I got this example going from. So I'll release all this code soon. I want to clean it up a little bit. Actually, I could probably release this one as is. I'll just keep I have in my .gitignore a way of keeping my environment variable secure. So just remember that if you do just pull my code, you want to, here, I'll just do it. To run examples, you want to open a node terminal, cd to location of directory you want to run. So this tutorial was called, the directory is called Realtime geo app. That's a pretty terrible title, but whatever. CD there, then you want to run npm install. And then run ionic serve. Before you do that, you need to set up a Firebase database and get the config variable, as I did earlier in this video, right? And I've done before in several videos. Get the config variable, paste your config variable into react app env.d.ts. Once that's done, you should be able to run npm install and then ionic serve to get it running on the browser. And I'll go ahead and put my repo link up here. Oops. What? I'll put my repo link up here as well. I think this is in my Games Interactive Media Mobile Design. I work for Boise State University, I should say, and it's primarily for my students, but I usually get a couple thousand hits a month on these videos, and I hope that keeps up. I hope there's always interest in cross-platform mobile development all over the world, and I'm happy to, I think anyone who wants information about how to do something with technology should be able to have access to it. Knowledge should be free. However, I still need to get paid and buy less squeaky chairs so my videos aren't quite as annoying auditorily. Alright, so let me, let's see, is this the right repo? No, I have a new one for this. So ionic-react app is the repo of interest, and I've only have one commit. I'll recommit this stuff so that there's more code in here, and just remember that this project's called something slightly different. Anyway, All right, there we go. Got that. Shut that down. Paste this in. Hey, and thank you very much for watching. It's been a fun tutorial series to develop, and I hope this is helpful to you as a developer.